Welcome, everyone. There she is.
Here
Hey,
I are.
all
Here I
right.
are. What a day! What a day! It's like we got here like just in time, and our poor pups are are Hungry because I got home late because a dear friend of ours is in the hospital, and we also had a meetup this morning with a handful of lovely women, and so with all of that, I didn't get back to town until 15 minutes before the show started. So, but here we are.
I'm here in a hotel room in Salt Lake City, just raring to go. Let's go.
Okay, energy, energy, energy. All right, let's dive in then.
Do it.
Maybe if we can.
I don't have my regular glasses with me, so I got my prescription safety glasses just so I can
Yeah.
see. I can't even read what's on the screen without something. So,
Well, I totally get it. Totally get it as well. And mine need to be fixed too. I mean, I need different. I need a new prescription as well. So sometimes I catch myself scowling because I can't see.
I'm definitely
So
due for a new pair.
yep. So welcome everybody to Deservingly You. This is your space where we talk about what it takes to rebuild after high control environments. Not that version that ends up looking good on the outside. This is those steps where we can make our life real and we can make it self-led. I'm Shannon and John Briggs. I'm a certified transformational resilience coach and co-founder of Luminous Connections and the Exit Generation. Tonight we're going to start with something nobody said to me and John when we left. Nobody pulled us aside and said, your brain isn't okay right now. And not in a broken way, but in a very specific way, a very understandable way. And because of that, sometimes we end up in situations where the decisions that we make in that window when we're first waking up, it's going to carry more weight than you realize. And nobody had said that to me. And so there are times when we're in that window, we can make decisions that we may have wished that we had done differently. And so tonight, that's the topic that we're going to be talking about is, the different decisions that we make and how we're even going to be comparing like how big decisions seem really is easy, but those small decisions seem really hard. So I'm looking forward to this topic tonight.
Yeah, me too. So welcome in. Appreciate you. I'm John Briggs, also transformational resilience coach, and co-founder of Luminous Connections. And I want to be honest about something. When Shannon talks about decisions that she wishes she had made differently, I got my own list as well. So, and here's what I've learned about that list is that the decisions that sit on it weren't bad, you know, so to say, weren't bad decisions, but because we were bad at deciding, but they were bad decisions because of when we decided to make those decisions, and we were in the worst possible window to be making them, and nobody told us, you know, that, or we're aware of it. So that's what tonight is about, not piling on regret, but giving you the information that we wish we had in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too is like some of you that are watching this may have been away for a few years. So this might be kind of like old news, but we want to be able to share information that can be helpful to people because there are a lot of people that are coming out right now. And so we'd love to have your guys' feedback and input. Do you agree with the ideas that we're bringing forward and so forth? So if you're with us tonight, let us drop in the chat where you're logging in from. And if you're on the replay, we'd love to see that as well. Let us know where you're watching us from. And if last week's micro boundaries conversation stuck with you, type micro in the chat as well. Tonight builds on that idea. Last week we talked about protecting that peace in a conversation. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the decisions that can shape our whole life. So also please like, subscribe, and hit notify. And if you're on a tablet or a phone, if you see the hype button, we'd love that too. So let's dive into it. Jay Mars, hopefully we'll get the rest of the crowd here. There we go. We've got Jay here, so absolutely.
Hi, Jay. Yeah. We're right on the cusp of 100 subscribers. Help us get there. Share it with somebody you might think needs to hear this. So before we go any further, let's set the space for tonight, because tonight is gonna it's gonna bring things up, right? And how you're with yourself while you're here matters as much as what we cover. This is a space for reflection, all right, not reaction, and curiosity over judgment, awareness over criticism. So if something stings, that's information, right? Something that gets your attention. Sit with it. You don't have to perform anything, while you're here. Just let it settle.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like participating, listening is great as well. If something does land for you, though, we do encourage you to put in the chat, because when we share with one another, we can see what we're learning together, as well as what you might give somebody an idea of what has helped them. Your honesty gives somebody else that feeling to be honest with themselves as well. And so that's how it works. So here's what we're going to be doing tonight. First of all, why leaving scrambles your decision making. And when I say scrambles, I mean that literally. There's a biology that happens inside of us here. And once you understand it, then it can stop feeling like you might be having a character flaw. Now, second, a pattern that shows up almost to everybody who leaves, it's actually a paradox, and it doesn't look like what you expect.
Yeah. And third, we're going to walk through the 10 decisions that a lot of people, they rush into most after leaving. And some of them are going to hit close to home. And that's okay. That's the point. And fourth, what happens when the decision is made for you, because not everyone gets to choose their own timing. And then fifth, we're going to give you a tool, 3 moves. Okay, no jargon, all agency.
All right. Well, let's start with what a big decision actually is, because when we're in that fog of leaving, everything can feel enormous. And so we want to take it and see if we can't get more specific tonight. Hey, Ruth, it's good to see you. So a big decision meets at least one of these 3 criteria. First of all, is it high stakes? The outcome affects your safety, your relationships, your finances, or your identity. We're not talking about what to eat for dinner here. We're actually talking about choices that can change the landscape of your life. And then a second, it's hard to undo. It's a decision that feels like, it might feel like relief in that moment, but it can actually become a burden when you end up carrying it for years if it can't be walked back.
And then third, future shaping, right? This one, it matters the most, we think, because a future shaping decision doesn't just affect today, all right? It sets a direction. And once that direction is set, once you've relocated, ended the marriage, gone public, the options available to you afterward are fundamentally different than they were before. And here's the part I want you to sit with. You're in the early window of leaving, when your nervous system is high on alert, your identity is still being rebuilt. Okay? And you are not in the best position to choose a direction that you'll be living inside of for the next several years. And that's not a judgment. It's just the conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when something, a lot of times too, when you first are like waking up, something might feel urgent. There's a question underneath of it. And the phase one question that we kept coming back to was this: what happened to me? What do I actually want now? Not what the urgency wants, what you want. And when the noise actually starts quieting down enough for you to hear yourself, that question is worth protecting.
All right. So here's what's happening inside you when you leave. Okay. And this might be the most important thing that we say during tonight's show. Your nervous system doesn't know, okay, that you left yet. Your body doesn't. It's still running the same survival program that it's been running for years, right? Scanning for threats, reading every interaction as potentially dangerous, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And that program is not designed for decision making when you're in that space. It's designed for one thing: keeping you alive, which means it prioritizes speed over wisdom, okay, and certainty over accuracy, action over reflection. And you're not in survival anymore, but your body doesn't know that, quite yet. And that gap between where you are and where your body thinks you are is where the most painful decisions get made. When they should just be on the back burner, possibly for a while.
Yeah. And there's a second thing that's happening on top of that. Your identity is being rebuilt. And so when you're inside the system, everybody there and the leaders there, they told you who you were, what you believed, what you valued, what you were allowed to want. And you organized your whole entire life around that identity. And then when you left, that lens ended up disappearing. So now everything that felt solid is completely up in question, including your own judgment. I was actually having a conversation a little bit about that today. And so in that wide open, terrifying space, a decision feels like solid ground. Making a move feels like it's something that we can stand on. So then you end up making the moves, not because they're necessarily the right moves, but because the alternative, sitting in that uncertainty, can feel unbearable.
Right. And there's two more pieces that I want to name quickly. Urgency feels like clarity, right? That feeling of I have to decide, I have to move, I have to act. Okay, it feels like confidence, like some sort of direction, like courage, perhaps. Okay, but most of the time it's a response to trauma. Okay, urgency and readiness are not the same thing. And the borrowed voice, a lot of what feels like your impulse to decide, may not actually be yours. It might be a leader's voice, a community's expectation, perhaps, fear that was installed in you long before you ever left that high control environment.
So if this sounds familiar to you and you've been wondering why you can't make decisions clearly since you left, like we said earlier, your brain isn't broken. It's actually doing exactly what it was built to do after this kind of experience that you've been through. So it's working at protecting you, and it can also hold you back when it comes to certain decisions and situations. Hey, Hunter, it's good to see you as well. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Yeah, so there's another layer that's underneath that nervous system piece, and it's specific to this community. High controlled environments don't just affect your nervous system, they actively remove your ability to decide. You didn't practice deciding in the system, what you were doing was practicing compliance. And so every area in your life had a prescribed answer. And then over the years, what ends up happening, even and for some over the decades, your decision-making muscle, atrophied. And so not because we're weak, but because we weren't using it. And so now that we are on the outside and we've left, you start experiencing, you're expected, to be able to make major life decisions with a muscle that hasn't been exercised in years. And then you may question yourself and be wondering, why is this so stinking hard?
Yeah. And, the system installed something else as well. Speed and certainty were signs of faith. Okay. If you knew quickly, if you decided without hesitation, that was evidence of some sort of spiritual strength. Pausing was a weakness. Questioning was some sort of rebellion. And so you learn to move fast. You learn to be certain even when you weren't. And even when the certainty was borrowed from someone else. And that training doesn't disappear when you leave. It just follows you along there. It comes with you.
Yeah. Hey, Diamond Davis, good to have you here. Thanks. So here's what all of this looks like on the other side. You stand in the grocery store for 10 minutes in front of, say, like a box of cereal, and you can't pick one. There's no rule anymore, and there's no approved answer. Not that it was that dictative where they told you that, but even just making the decisions. So that small choice for me actually was more about even like picking the style of glasses that I wanted for my kitchen. I would have a very, very difficult time to choose between the design that I want. It was like the whole world can see you don't know who you are yet. And then maybe that same entire week, you're absolutely ready to end a marriage or cut off your entire family, quit your job, move across the country, those types of things. So from the outside, that looks like chaos. But from the inside, this small decision is terrifying because nobody is going to tell you that you got it right. And then that big decision, that ends up feeling like freedom because it's finally something that you're choosing.
Yeah. And you didn't learn to trust yourself. That capacity wasn't exercised and it was replaced. And now the system's gone. And you're doing the best that you can with tools that you were given. But it can come back, okay? Not through making bigger and faster decisions to prove that you can, but just through one pause, and then another, and then another. Just continuing that flow. Okay, so here's the pattern. And when we've described this to people, the response we get over and over is, how did you know? Okay. How did you know that this was happening to me, at this time? The same person who can't decide what to have for lunch will sometimes in that same season make one big decision of their life almost impulsively. Okay. And not after long consideration, not after talking to 10 trusted peers or people that they know, quickly with certainty that feels absolute. And they're just kind of they're frozen there on small decisions and rushing big ones. Now, the same person, same month, and it's not random. So.
And when we look at those small decisions, they feel impossible because there's no longer that framework to validate them. So inside the system, even those small choices would have a right answer, and now the filter is gone. And so every small choice becomes more difficult. It's not like, what do I want for dinner? It's, who am I without the system telling me what I should want? And we are definitely simplifying these situations. Like we said before, they didn't dictate like what kind of our dishes and stuff like that. But it could be something like going to a movie or something like that, you know? And so when we are faced with this, it can bring up a level of fear that actually can feel terrifying. And so we end up freezing in those situations when we've got those small decisions. But then when we've got the big decisions, I've seen this in some of the chats where people will rush in on some of the things that they want to do instead of really taking their time and looking at all of the aspects and how it can impact their life.
Yeah, they're making decisions on emotion and impulse. And, these big decisions, they feel completely different, right? They feel like agency, like finally being in control of something after years of having no control. Ending a marriage, cutting off family, moving, like cross country perhaps. But these things, they feel like self-determination at the time. They feel like the first real choices that you've ever made or for a long time. And the tragedy is the urgency driving them isn't wisdom. Like we mentioned before, it's the same wound wearing a different outfit, so to speak. And the system never let you choose. And now that wound is expressing itself as the desperate need to choose something, anything. And right now, yesterday.
Yeah. So that same system that ended up freezing us on the small things can launch us into big decisions way too fast. And so if this is landing for you, if you recognize this type of pattern inside yourself, drop a hands up or a thumbs up in the chat. We want to be able to see if this is making sense. And if those small decisions versus the big decisions, if that's making sense. So we want to go over some of the top big decisions that people will face. So let's name them. And if you hear yourself in it, hear it through everything that we said. You were operating in a survival mode and you were doing the best that you could with what you had. This is an indictment. It's recognition.
Exactly. And number one there, ending a marriage or partnership. Sometimes the right call, obviously, but often made before there's been time to separate what the relationship actually is from what the system made it to be.
Yeah. I know that this was one of the things that I did. Not that my marriage wouldn't have ended, but the process, the way that I handled it was, I didn't. I practiced making the big decision quickly instead of really, really doing it in a more mature manner. And so that was one of them that I definitely made a mistake in. So the second one is cutting off all of family, full no contact. Sometimes this is definitely necessary, but there are times too we're going full no contact in the heat of leaving is different from making that choice when we're doing this from clarity. So this one for me, when I did choose to separate and to go no contact with my family, I took over a year to really take my time before I did that. And so I wasn't doing it out of emotion. I was really clear on like what I was looking for in those relationships, as well as what I was willing to like put up with too. Was it bringing me peace by having those relationships, or did it cause me an additional anxiety? So I took my time before I made that decision to cut them off.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. It took me 2 years to come to that conclusion.
Yeah.
But it was with clarity and no emotion tied to it.
No. No emotion. Wait. No emotion to the decision, not the family. Of course, we've got emotion to our family, but the decision to separate was there. There wasn't an emotional tie to it.
Yes.
To the decision.
Right. You got it there. So number 3, a major career change or quitting the job. The job can feel like the last thing tied to it, right? But walking away with a plan, without a plan, just adds a crisis on top of a crisis.
Yeah. And then number 4 is relocating to escape. Wherever you go, your nervous system is going to go with you. You know, your zip code may change and stuff, but the work that you need to do internally, that doesn't. You still have to do that work. And so here you might be saying, but John, Shannon, you moved clear across the country. We moved clear across the country before we woke up, actually. Yeah. And so we weren't doing that to move. It did make it a little bit easier when we did, because we hadn't developed those relationships. But yeah, just to relocate to escape your nervous system is gonna go with you. And Jade made the point, at the time he was fading, most of his business was tied with JWs. Yep, that's understandable. And so with this, in making these types of decisions, is like taking all of that into account. We're not saying that these aren't decisions that you do or you don't want to do. It's like, we don't want to rush into them. And we're going to get into a little bit later too. Sometimes we can't help. There are sometimes that decisions are made despite what we want to do.
And that one reminds me of an old saying that I've been known to say is, wherever you go, there you are.
Yep.
Right. And number 5, joining a new religion or spiritual community. See, it's definitely understandable that, the longing for a community after leaving, or at any time, is one of the most common human needs, that there is, or just something that we want. But without your own discernment, you can walk out of one high control system and right into another one, without that clarity of knowing what's going on there.
Yeah. And that you can also see that this one and the next one, if you think of somebody in a domestic violence situation, it's kind of similar here. A lot of times people who experience domestic violence will end up in another relationship that is also with another abuser. And so none of these decisions are wrong. None of them are bad. What we're saying is that these are the ones that people typically will rush into to make a decision. So as I was saying, number 6, that a new romantic relationship, that need for love and safety is absolutely real. But when we have those relationships that are built when another person feels like your rescue, then the relationship is carrying more weight than any relationship was designed to carry. And that weight is what can break things. And this actually kind of reminds me too, John, like when in AA, they kind of have rules, or it's unwritten rules, right? Where they basically recommend people not get involved.
Yeah, for at least a year, before they gain, before they basically gain some clarity and some direction, and it's because a lot of people, they end up, they leave one individual, but they end up with the same person over and over again. And that goes with that territory.
Yeah.
So number 7, large financial decisions while dysregulated. Okay, investments, business ventures, major purchases. Okay, these look very different 6 months down the road or a year, when a lot of regret can compound.
Yeah. And then number 8 is legal action against the organization. Sometimes, the right path, it is the right path, but it's also a long road. The other thing too is when you jump into something like this right away, is that your nervous system isn't ready for it, and starting in it in the rawness of when we are first leaving can actually set you back. And so this is one of those things. I remember when I was going through my divorce, and I was like, oh my God, this is like a chess game. And it's not fair. And it was strategy. So we want to make sure that our nervous system is ready if we do decide to move forward with any type of legal action, that we're as ready emotionally as we can be.
Yeah. Number 9, go in public. 2 years ago, just after, real quick, just after we decided to start, we were still trying to decide what direction we were going to take exactly and trying to process this stuff. And I had a family member ask, we just moved to North Carolina, actually, and she asked me, have you found a kingdom hall yet? She kept asking me, have you found a kingdom hall? Do you have any friends yet? And I was, basically, I just said, no. Well, why? Well, because it's a cult. So I hadn't thought that through. And that was a decision, a huge decision, like we're talking about here, that I rushed into and later regretted, perhaps a little bit. So, go in public. So your story is definitely real. What happened to you matters, but the stories will still be there when you're ready. Okay, and it lands differently when you tell it when you're standing on solid ground and you have some intention and purpose there behind it.
Yeah. So then we've got number 10, and that is expanding the family while identity is still rebuilding. So a new life added to an uncertain landscape, that's a decision that deserves the most stable ground that you can give it.
And then, most of these, they can wait. Okay, and that's the truth. And most people, when they look back, they wish they'd given themselves the time, like I just brought up a minute ago. Yeah. So I'm definitely not excluded from any of this.
Yeah. So what about these? I'm curious. Like, does any of these 10 stand out to any of you guys? Do you agree? Do you disagree? And it's okay to disagree. We just don't want to debate it. It's okay to agree to disagree. But I'm curious if any of these sounded familiar. If there are any of them that you've actually contemplated and decided to hold back, or you jumped in ahead. John and I shared a couple of them that we've jumped ahead on. All righty.
As a reminder, I can't see any of the comments from my end here.
Yeah.
So if there's anything that you think I could hear or comment on, let me know.
Yeah. So John said he had to retire to take care of his mom 6 years ago after 33 years of work. So yeah, those are that sounds like it might have been like when the decision was made for you, like what we're gonna dive into right now. So this this is something that can actually be accidentally skipped over, because everything so far is assumed that the decision is yours to make. And some of you, that's not the reality. The decision was actually made without your consent.
Yeah, so the shunning or disfellowshipping, you were disfellowshipped or shunned. The community made that call. Okay. And one day the people who'd been your entire world simply just weren't there anymore. A parent or a sibling, a child was told to cut you off. And then you watch someone you love comply with a directive that had nothing to do with what they actually felt for you. And you couldn't stop it. Or that job ended because of your exit, and you had no vote, and the financial consequences just landed on top of everything else.
Yeah. And if any of this is part of your story, there is a difference between having no choice about the situation and having no agency in how you respond to it. And that's where the difference matters. Not to minimize what was done to you, but to give you something that you can hold on to. Because how you respond to a forced transition is still a decision. And that decision belongs to you.
Right. And I'll say this, it's not easy for or to find that agency when the grief is fresh. Okay. It's not some sort of light switch that you can just flip on or off. And sometimes knowing it's available to you, even before you can access it, it's enough to hold on to until you can. Yeah.
So I thought that I would share one of the stories that I did do well in making a decision, and possibly that might be able to help you if you face a challenge when you can hold that line. So many of you know that I received a diagnosis of cancer, and the moment that happened, that's when that pressure started. I got a ton of pressure from the doctors. And they were like, you got to decide fast. You got to do this. You got to get surgery. You got to get it scheduled. Don't wait. Do it now. Do it now. And I just went into like this calm. Sorry, I've got a little dog that's like acting up right at the moment. Jasmine, come here. Hey, come here. Come here. And so I chose not to jump into any of that at first. I did not do conventional medicine. I did more of an integrated approach. And one of the things that I learned during that is that there was a lot of emotional work that I ended up doing. It was part of the treatment plan, but it wasn't all. I thought that I was going in and was going to cure the cancer, but it ended up being a lot bigger than that. And so I went through this whole entire time with working on myself and really looking at the situation. And so then when it came time, it was like 2 years later. So I worked on myself. I worked on my health. I worked on, we were treating the illness, but it was a more rounded and full approach to it. And so then by the time that I did choose to have surgery, I was ready for it. I knew exactly what I wanted. And it was like the right doctor appeared literally the day before when I went into the radiologist to ask, and said, okay, I'm ready for surgery. The perfect surgeon for me had introduced herself to him the day before. And so that's the surgeon that I ended up going with. And I ended up also getting one of the top plastic surgeons in the Seattle area because I felt like when I was ready, it came and I didn't rush into it. And so it wasn't any, it was kind of weird because it was like I didn't have like this overwhelming fear, but I knew that I knew what I needed, and I knew what didn't feel right from the pressure that I had received from the medical field. That was like the worst part of the whole entire cancer journey anyway, was the pressure from the medical field. But when I did go down that journey and having that sense of calm and being able to trust my own judgment, there was a little bit of fear that came out, because it's like when you're having surgery, it can be kind of scary. But overall, I knew that this was the right situation, and it ended up being that way. And I knew that the choice was mine in a way that it could only be mine, because I had protected that. Every time I'd go into the radiologist's office, he'd be like, would you please see a surgeon? And I was like, I wasn't ready for it. And so I did practice patience with that until I was ready. And it ended up being a huge gift for me.
Yeah. And I just want to say something about watching Shannon walk through this. I saw the pressure she was under, not by me, by the way. Okay. I never pictured her.
It was amazing.
And what I learned by watching her is this: the pause didn't make things worse. Like she'll tell you, when the doctors were pressuring her, she'd be like, "Hey, I need to sit with this for a little bit. I'm still gonna have cancer tomorrow." And so the decision that came out of it was cleaner, it was more clear, it was out of confidence, more hers than it could have been if she decided in the heat, right, of that first urgency that people in the medical field try to place the pressure her into. And that's not a personality thing either. It's not something that Shannon has that you don't have, or either one of us. It's what becomes available to all of us when we trust our own process and we just kind of shut everything else out, all that noise. So if Shannon's story landed for you, I'd appreciate if you just drop a heart in the chat if it resonates. And you don't have to explain why or what. So appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for the heart.
All right. So let's be honest about the cost. Okay. Not to pile it on, but because naming the cost is what makes the pause worth it. Okay. And there's 4 costs that show up in the rush when you do rush it. The first is the financial, and agreements signed before any sort of stability returns. Money moved on a picture of the future that turned out to be incomplete. And these decisions often take years to recover from. The second is relational. Some of the connections that were severed in anger or new ones formed too fast even, okay, they leave more pain than they resolved. And that pain doesn't always announce itself right away either, okay? And sometimes it shows up quietly years later, when you're stable enough to look back.
Yeah. So the third cost is regret. This one can feel misunderstood. It's not a failure. It's that feeling that tells you that the conditions that you made that choice under weren't the conditions that you deserved. And going back to the cancer journey, the pressure that I had from the medical field, there was one situation where I ended up meeting another woman who had gone through and actually had used the same surgeon that I had originally interviewed. And hearing her story, I just broke down in tears, because by the time that they did her surgery, she had been on high dose chemotherapy and stuff like that, and they couldn't even find the tumor. And they decided to go ahead with the surgery anyway. So they did the surgery without even not being able to find the tumor. And part of the standard of care was to do a lymphaectomy. And what the lymphaectomy is to remove all the lymph nodes. And so this was a woman who had a cake baking. She did like wedding cakes and stuff like that. And after that surgery, she had lymphedema. And they tested all of the lymph nodes that they had taken out, and guess how much cancer they found? It was 0. So she had that surgery, and now she has that for the rest of her life, has that lymphedema. And so that ends up affecting her job because of making the cakes. Another thing too was I had gone to a retreat where these women who had gone through this and were so traumatized by what they had gone through that they couldn't even get dressed in the light. They would only get dressed in like a dark closet and stuff because of not being able to see themselves. And that was one of the things that I didn't experience with my situation. I didn't look at myself with I looked at the scars in a different way because I had done the emotional work through that as well. And so when I had zero regret for any of the decisions that I made through that journey, and I know it kind of, you may not see like the common themes between a cancer journey versus coming out of a cult, but it's about the decisions. So there's a particular weight to regret when you can clearly see that the rush was avoidable. And if somebody had just told you, you have more time than you think, you may have waited. And that weight is what we're trying to help you. It's like we don't want you to carry what's unnecessary, that the regret of these type of situations. And so the fourth is, for this community, might be the most important. Are you trading one control for another? So when you move too fast into another community, into that new belief system or a new authority without having developed your own discernment, then you can walk out of one high control structure and straight into another. And I had a situation where when I was actually last fall, for some reason, I kept getting invited to all of these women's Christians groups. And I wasn't interested, but I was like, why are these always showing up? And when I did like my own journaling and stuff like that, I really had the aha moment that this was a way for me to learn how to stand in that space without having to adapt to their beliefs and make them my own. Because I got to be able to stand in my own autonomy and stand in that space. And because I chose it. And sometimes when we go into those environments and we're not recognizing that it might be a trade-off for another system, then it can feel like freedom. And it can also feel, John and I have talked the last few weeks about that chaos, where the chaos can actually feel comfortable because that's what our nervous system is used to. So we need to be able to choose where we're going on our own. Urgency doesn't discriminate. It's going to walk you right back into some of those familiar territories if you allow it to lead. And what we want to do is help, is to be able to have our own lives self-led. Did that make sense? Hopefully that made sense.
Well, absolutely. I've been aware for a long time that the brain will always gravitate toward what's familiar.
Yeah.
And if you know that, you're very much aware of it, you can block it. Say, wait a minute, what am I doing here? What's going on?
That can take some practice. You're not going to automatically be able to do it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Okay, so we named the problem. Now let's talk about the tool. And I love this tool because it's genuinely simple. There's just 3 moves to it, no jargon. And there's 3 moves that you can experiment with the next time urgency spikes.
Move number 1, pause your body. See, this comes first because urgency is not primarily an initial thought. Okay, it's a physical experience, and you feel it in your chest, your stomach, your jaw. And if you try to think your way out of urgency without first addressing it in your body, you're fighting it with the wrong tool. And one slow belly breath, 10-second shoulder drop. Okay, feel your feet on the floor. And you see, that's the whole first move. And what it does physiologically is signal to your nervous system that you're not immediately in any danger at the moment, right then and there.
Yep, it can help bring down that cortisol. So the next piece is naming the driver. So once your body, that cortisol has kind of come down a little bit and your body has a little bit room, you can ask the question that can change everything. What's actually driving this? And this can be the hardest move because it requires you to be willing to see something that you may not want to see. Like, this urgency is coming from fear of rejection. We talked about the fears a few weeks ago. Or it might be coming from a voice, a borrowed voice. It's not our voice. It's that indoctrination, those messages that we've heard all of these years. Or we might have that desire to prove something to people who doubted us. Now, none of these are wrong to feel, but all of them are not good reasons to make a major life decision. So naming that driver out loud, even if it's just to yourself, can take away that power that operates invisibly.
Yeah. And move 3, pick the smallest reversible move. Because urgency wants you to believe it's now or never. Okay. And almost always that just ain't the case. And there's almost always a smaller version. First step that doesn't close the door behind you, but a move that gives you information without costing you everything in the process.
Yeah. So, so what do you guys think of this? What do you think that you can identify in a situation what might actually be driving a situation that's urgent, or actually recognize when that voice is not your own and it's actually underneath in what it's saying? Just having one small, being able to identify that and choosing a different step, something that's reversible. Do you think that could give you enough information to pause on a big decision? So we'd love to hear what you guys think about that.
Yeah, what came up possibly. So drop it in the chat if you want to share it. We'd love to hear it. And what brought this up. Right. So how do you know when a decision can wait and when it generally can't? We're not saying delay everything forever. Life moves on. Sometimes there's a real deadline, okay, at stake. But from walking alongside, other people in this work, situations where you genuinely cannot wait are far fewer than urgency tells you they are.
Yeah. And so we've got 4 questions here on the slide. Will this decision look the same to me in 90 days? The 90 days isn't going to hurt you. And if you get that, I don't know, that's also an answer. So, and also, are you deciding from clarity or from pain? Real clarity tends to feel calm, whereas pressure can feel like something that is chasing you, or even you might feel something physical. You might have a tighter chest, those types of things. And is there a smaller reversible version of this? What can I try first? There always is something. So, and then finally, have I talked to somebody? Have I talked to somebody's values? Are they aligned? Not someone from the system that I left, but somebody who can see clearly when I can't. Jay says he bought a house during COVID.
And then there's 3 myths to take off the table. And first, I have to decide right now. Okay. The feelings of now or never is almost always a feeling and not based on facts. The urgency is real, but the deadline usually is not.
Yeah. Another myth that we've got here is waiting means that I'm weak. So this isn't the case. This myth can definitely have deep roots. We were trained to see that this could be a weakness or something of lack of faith. And that training isn't going to disappear just because we leave. So waiting with intention is one of the most disciplined, self-respecting things that we can do for ourselves. And it's the active decision to protect your future self from the current pain that that you're experiencing right now.
Exactly. And then third, if I feel sure, I must be ready, right? This is the most dangerous one because certainty was the currency inside the system. Certainty was faith. Okay. And so certainty feels trustworthy in a way that doubt just doesn't. But here's what we've learned. Certainty can be a trauma response. Most definitely. The feeling of absolute knowing can be generated entirely by a nervous system trying to escape pain. Real readiness feels different. It's quieter, it's settled. Okay. If it feels like urgency dressed up as confidence, just take a step back and breathe and then just pause.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. So before we wrap up, we want to ask something, because understanding something and doing something are two different things. We want to, before we end, we want to actually ask you to do something. So pick one of these before you go to bed tonight, before you go to sleep. Identify one big decision that you may be feeling pressured about, and just write down the statement, "I'm not deciding this today," and that's it. And put it where where you can see it, and let it act as your agency tonight. Sometimes we can borrow that.
Yeah. Then option 2 there, practice the 3 move decision pause on one thing that's been feeling really urgent, in your life, and just actually, do it. Breathe, name the driver, and find the smallest reversible move, and notice what shifts in that moment.
Oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
Then option 3, write down one small reversible version of something that you've been treating as all or nothing. Okay.
Yeah.
And then find the smaller version of the big leap, and just sit with that.
Yep. And then on Monday, if any of you guys want to join us tomorrow, actually, when we have our breakout, we'd love to hear about it there. Tell us what you chose and what you noticed, if you did notice anything. And we all absolutely want to celebrate when we start practicing these things and we start learning ourselves to trust ourselves. We want to root each other on as we do this, as we come out of that cognitive dissonance.
So what we covered, let's look at what we did tonight.
So we talked about what a big decision is, and the high stakes, the hard to undo, future shaping, and a category that deserves a different pace. We talked about why your brain at this situation, especially when you first come out, why it's not ready, and that we are in a survival mode. Even if we've already left, our nervous system remembers that. We're in that part where urgency is a trauma response, and that all of this isn't weakness, it's just biology.
And number 3 there, the paradox, frozen on small choices and rushing the big ones. And same wound, different outfit. Okay. And then 10 decisions that people rush. Most of them can wait. We discovered that. And then most people wish that they had waited.
Yep. I know I definitely had some of those decisions that I made that I definitely wish that I would have waited. We also talked about the decision pause, and what that meant was to take the time to actually pause your body so that we can bring our cortisol down, so that we actually are working also in a different part of our brain when we do that. And then name the driver, and then pick a small reversible move that's tied to that. And so this can help us learn how to realign our agency.
And everything that we're building here is at the exitgeneration.org, and you can find the the free Exit Pass workbook there. It's just waiting for you to download.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
All right, so we want to open it up and see if anybody would like to come on the stage and share a thought or idea that you came from that you got from tonight's topic. You can talk about a decision that you did make, you didn't make. I've got to do that. I got to do the invite. Sorry. I said it was a busy day today with going clear across town and stuff. So sorry that I didn't get that up there.
Yeah, you called me 15 minutes or so from the house. Still driving. So.
Yep. John, you're right. Decisions are a gamble. I completely agree. Completely. Love your thinking. So
appreciate, keep in mind that when you come on stage, it doesn't have to be some polished version, perfect words. There's something that may have landed, it can be a question. Maybe there's a decision that you felt pressure into making right after leaving, and what you wish someone had said to you then. Maybe one of the 10 that is live for you right now and going on with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to say it out loud to someone who will hear it without judgment. I can say that for myself and Shannon, I'm sure as well. Maybe you tried the decision pause a few minutes ago and something shifted right within the last hour. And remember, whatever you share here, somebody else might hear it and kind of have that aha moment as well.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
And we also don't want to force it. So we know we have our regulars that do like to come, and it doesn't look like they're on tonight. So that's okay too. But we'll go on. If you do decide that you want to come on the board or come on the screen. Yes, thank you. I'm like lost for the words. My dogs have been getting up with the sun, and so I've been up since 5:15 this morning again.
And we're carrying this over into tomorrow night inside the Exit Generation Facebook group. These Monday discussions that we have become something really special, because it's one thing that you hear something live in the episode, like tonight, but it's another thing to sit with it for a day and then bring up what landed to a group of people who get it, who understand.
Yeah. So I've really enjoyed. We've been doing this for 12 weeks now. 12 weeks we've been having these discussions. So it's been really amazing to hear different people's perspectives and the way that they're applying the different things in their life and thinking about different things. So here's the questions that we're going to be going over tomorrow. They'll also be posted in the Facebook group, and then I'll also be having them up on the screen during the breakout. And so we actually add a sixth one. We always start with gratitude because we want to be able to ground ourselves. So anyway, these are the questions. It's going to be tomorrow night, 4 p.m. We do it on every Monday at 4 p.m. in the Exit Generation Facebook group. So we'd love to have you guys join us and enter the conversation. It's a Zoom. I do record them, but they are in a private Facebook group. If you don't want to be on the screen, or if you want to join and not have anything show, I can black you out as well. So that's also. And we have Missy. We have our dear friend in Scottsdale just joined us as well. So it's good to see you, girl.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Yep, absolutely. So next week, Johnny, what are we talking about next week? I'm excited about this one too. For next week.
All right. So you came in tonight carrying something, perhaps. Maybe a decision pulling at you. Maybe just a way of feeling life like you should have it more together by now. Hope that you're leaving with a little more room, a little more permission, a little more understanding after tonight and what's coming up.
Yeah. And so next week we're gonna be actually kind of closing out our topics that are around the phase 1 of the paths framework. And so we're gonna be closing that out. And this might actually kind of surprise some people, because once you slow down those decisions, you can run into other things. And that's the memories. Because when you leave a high controlled environment, you don't just leave the rules. You guys know, you guys that have done it, you leave a whole world, and that life that was real, and people who were real, and some of the things that you built inside that system, some of them were genuinely good, and some of it constructed. It was constructed for you by people who needed you to believe it. And so sometimes, like, sorting through all of that and figuring it all out, that can be really challenging. And so figuring out what you can keep and take with you down the future, that's one of the biggest pieces of rebuilding the work. And that's one of the things, too, that John and I, people will say over and over to us. We've heard this for years. How can you be so resilient? And this was one of the things that we actually learned about was being able to take the lessons learned from the situations that we went through, no matter how difficult and how hard they were. So hopefully we'll be able to share this idea with you guys next week and see what you guys think about that.
So like it says there, we'll be sorting memories, or and what do you actually keep, rebuilding identity, and after exiting. Yeah.
So as always, subscribe, hit notify, share this with somebody who may be in that early window. And we keep hearing over and over, more and more people are leaving, more and more people are leaving. And somebody may be feeling that urgency and don't realize that they don't need to make some of those big decisions right away.
Yeah. And they don't need to go back.
Right.
We talked about that last week.
A few weeks ago, yeah. So the thought that I thought I would leave with you guys tonight is from Oprah Winfrey. And when I first read it, it landed the way a few things may have. So when you don't know what to do, my best advice is to do nothing until clarity comes. So doing nothing until clarity comes, that doesn't mean that we're not doing something forever. And we're also not going to be doing things out of fear. But we actually are trusting the fact that clarity is available to us and it will come. But when coming out of these high controlled environments, a lot of times, because of the chaos is so comfortable and we're so used to being there, we have a tendency to fill every quiet moment with a decision that isn't ready to be made yet. And so that's what we're asking, just for that next 24 hours. If there's a big decision that has been pulling for you, try one of the ideas that John and I presented, because nothing that is inside of you will get quiet enough until you hear it clearly.
Clarity is the first step that we always bring forward with our clients. So yeah,
that's the very first piece that we look at. And then after we look at that, we end up we kind of balance it out and go down different angles, and then we'll come back to the clarity to see where adjustments have been made and stuff too. So all right, so that's what we've got. Go ahead.
That's what we got for you tonight. Took the words right out of my mouth.
I did. Thanks a lot, everybody, for being here and for giving this hour and 15 minutes to something that matters. And thank you for taking your own healing seriously, because that's one of the most courageous things that you can do.
And if tonight hit or landed for you, resonated, please like, subscribe, hit that notify button, share it with someone who needs it. Let's get as many people on board as we can, and to find clarity in this difficult time. A lot of people are lost out there coming out of this. and things like it.
Yep. And if you guys would like to support the work that John and I are doing too, there is a link on our main channel where you can make donations if you would ever like to support it. And so John, Jay, Hunter, Sylvia, Ruth, thank you guys all. Dave, thanks for joining us tonight, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it. See you
All
next
right.
week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.